There are both good and evil in this world, a constant duality between both. We are leaving a very dark time, my friends. Evil has controlled this planet both physically and spiritually. The evil that the elite conjure is not a game. It is very real. It has become so prevalent that they even flaunted it in front of us in TV, movies, music, books, etc. They had become arrogant because they had complete control for centuries. I bring this up because of a movie that I had just watched, which was one of the first ever movies ever created. It related so much to what we've learned through the Podesta emails that I had to share it with all of you. Viewer discretion is advised. Through love and compassion, we are eradicating evil for a very, very long time. Be there for one another and never lose hope, for this is our spiritual awakening. We are at a pinnacle point on earth where we are seeing evil panic, but don't ever count it out. Where we go one, we go all. Hello and welcome, fellow digital soldiers. On today's podcast, we will be covering an article, and from what you've seen from the intro, we will be covering something that is changing within our world. It is entitled, Satan is Having a Moment. A documentary chronicles the rise of a satanic temple, a modern pseudo-religion fighting to stave off an increasingly evangelical U.S. government. With everything that has happened since Easter, from the burning of the cathedral to the killing of many Christians in Sri Lanka, so on and so forth, the cabal, the evil is panicking. It is doing everything that it can to stay in control, and it will not last. It is fading out. We are eradicating what has kept us down for so long. So my friends, before we get into any of this article, would you please welcome our new sponsor, Noble Gold. Hey friends, Thomas here from True Reporting. Today I wanted to tell you about the President Trump 2020 Freedom Coin. Mine came in a few days ago and I love the way it looks on my desk. It comes in silver or gold, making it an investment in precious metals and a timeless tribute to our President of the United States. If you want to add one of these coins to your own collection, go to TrumpCoin2020.com. And don't forget to use the promo code TrueReporting to get a $5 off the silver and True Reporting Gold to get $100 off the gold coin. If you want to support True Reporting, this is the best way to do so. All right, my friends, it's good to have you aboard. Let's go ahead and hop into it. This is True Reporting. So as I said before, this article is entitled Satan is Having a Moment. A new documentary chronicles the rise of a satanic temple, a modern pseudo-religion fighting to stave off an increasingly evangelical U.S. government, by Matthew Jacobs. Also, this was posted on the HuffingtonPost.com, so you obviously know where they're coming from. It says here, Satanists, it turns out, are everything you think they're not. Patriotic, charitable, ethical, equality-minded, dedicated to picking up litter with pitchforks on an Arizona highway. That much is clear in the fantastic new documentary, Hail Satan, which chronicles the rise of the Satanic Temple, a movement that has little to do with its titular demon. Founded in 2013, the organization is equal parts modern-day religion, political activist coalition, and meta-cultural revolution. By reclaiming the pop iconography that has long frightened evangelical America. Devil worship, ritualistic sacrifice, horns, pentagrams, the so-called Black Mass. The Satanic Temple aims to catch people's attention and then surprise them with the messages of free speech, compassion, liberty, and justice for all. No wonder membership has spiked since Donald Trump's election. Penny Lane's film, opening in limited release this weekend, enthusiastically dispels myths about the history of Satanism, using the controversial belief system as a lens to survey the myriad ways our government has made Christianity the national religion. If a state legislator votes to erect a Ten Commandments monument, the church argues, why shouldn't the Satanic Temple be able to introduce a pillar of their own? It's only fair. I sat down with Lane in New York for a fascinating conversation about making the movie, how Hollywood has popularized erroneous devil worship cliches, the satanic panic frenzy of the 80s and 90s, and the ubiquitous theocratic motto, "In God We Trust." At one point, he asked, did you know what this movie would be? It's more than a profile of an organization or an exhaustive cultural history. There's a moment early in my research, just in my reading, where I realized that I was completely wrong about something. I thought upon casually scanning headlines about this group and what they were up to, that the Satanic Temple was like a fiction, a political troll satire thing, like the Yes Men, where they were pretending that they were members of an imaginary organization in order to make these points. The moment I knew what the film would be was when I realized that that was totally wrong. What would a new religion starting from scratch do if it wanted to make sense in the world we actually live in? Penny Lane, director of Hail Satan. The group perhaps had started as that, and then had very quickly evolved to be something real, where there is a thing called the Satanic Temple, and there are members, and they have very particular beliefs, and they're not just trolls. I was like, oh, that's a cool story. It was almost the same as the birth of any religion. First, you have to have some publicity stunts to get attention, some miracles, maybe. From there, maybe you have something to say, and then people would join. I feel like I've never seen that story, watching a religion get born right before our eyes. The story of the Satanic Temple is one of free speech. Did you always know the movie would be about that? Sort of, yeah. I don't think it's really about free speech. The politics of what they're doing is obviously really important. Is this woman crazy, guys? Off the record, is this woman crazy? And as a particularly American phenomenon, they're trying to uphold the First Amendment. Their activism is not particularly radical. They're not anarchists. They don't want to burn it all down. The freedom of speech thing for me comes under the headline of, in quote, a new religion for modernity. What could religion be in the 21st century? What would a new religion starting from scratch do if it wanted to make sense in the world we actually live in? Would it be about non-scientific paranormal claims about invisible people in the sky? Or would it be about embracing the centuries of progress that Enlightenment project has given us? It seems like that would be a better religion. Is this real, friends? Seriously. You started working on the film before Trump's election. Once his presidency began, did anything shift in terms of what the movie was trying to say? Like everything else, it's the same answer. Everything was suddenly more urgent. Trump's alliance with the evangelical community has none of the values but all of the power grab. It was very frightening for a lot of people, who ended up with people like Mike Pence, who was legitimately a theocrat. He would love for the Bible to be a document that we all obey as Americans. Then someone like Betsy DeVos, still super evangelical, loves prayer in school. It was super easy if you were me, under Barack Obama, to not pay attention. I don't even know what the guy was doing for like 6 months at a time. Now you're hyper aware and fearful. So I think that for a lot of people, this story took on a lot more urgency. And certainly membership in the Satanic Temple spiked after Trump's election. Many people that I spoke to told me that Trump's election was a turning point for them. The moment in the film that stunned me was in the Satanic Temple member reframed satanic panic as the Catholic Church projecting its own history of abuse onto the public. We all know how ridiculous and sensationalistic that error was, but I never heard it put that way. It's pretty stunning. I had some same responses to that. I will say this about that. The entire history of Satanism is one of a projection. Satanic panic is one example. All the way up until 1966, there were no people who called themselves Satanists. There literally weren't any. There was a fear that manifested into an elaborate fantasy on the part of the Catholic Church, mostly if you want to point a finger somewhere. Then you had this imaginary idea that everywhere around you there were these devil worshippers who were doing these terrible things. In many cases, well, in all cases, that was used as a justification to kill people, whether it was witches or for many a millennia, the Jews. All the same atrocities were attributed to these groups of people by the Catholics as way of murdering them. Then you go into the Satanic Panic and you see this is the same thing. I was blown away as well. Was there a singular moment like that for you? Something that made your jaw drop? I would say the main thing for me was the moment when I suddenly turned to my producer and said, "How is this our national motto? In God we trust." I'm a lifelong atheist. Somehow I never realized that was so weird. And it's ubiquitous. It's on every dollar bill you touch. What they do, the Satanists, is they awaken you to look around and see the world you actually live in. Suddenly you notice the Ten Commandments monument on the State House lawn. Suddenly you do notice that we think it's normal that people pass out Bibles in public schools. These are all actually not normal. In some sense, it looks normal to us because we're so used to it. Of course, it's a long story, but the most recent iteration of putting God in government was really only 50 years ago, as opposed to 200 or 300 years ago, which is what I would have assumed. I think that for me was the biggest mind-blowing thing. It actually is a quite modern phenomenon. If you went home and Google it, you'd see that there's hundreds and hundreds of these local fights happening where some senator somewhere wants to put the Ten Commandments on a state house property, or some senator somewhere wants to have prayer in public schools or write "In God We Trust" on police cars. Those battles all look really stupid and petty. Who cares if the Phoenix City Council wants to have prayers before their meetings? But when you look at them in totality and start to understand, it's not like they're going to stop. It's not like, oh, we got "In God We Trust" on the police car, now we're done. It's like they're ammo. It's evidence and ammunition for the next battle. With these Ten Commandments monuments, people now suddenly believe that this is integral part of American history, which in fact, they're movie props. That was very chilling for me. Initially, someone like Satanic Temple co-founder Lucien Greaves would make that point and I'd think, okay, that sounds a little bit paranoid or a little bit of a conspiracy theory. It's probably not that serious. As I did the research, I realized that he was completely right. I didn't know the extent to where there's an organized, well-funded, very effective lobbying happening nationwide. You don't have to be paranoid to think just because we have a liberal secular democracy now doesn't mean we will always. It's not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but it has happened in the past. Iran was a secular nation until 1980, when all of a sudden it became a theocracy. It's something that awakened a kind of urgency in me. I never thought there was any reason to be all concerned. It certainly is much more possible every time you let one of these small steps get taken. Unbelievable. I'm fascinated by the way the devil worship imagery has infused pop culture. A few years ago, when the horror movie The Witch came out, the Satanic Temple was very supportive of it, which is interesting because that movie embraces the occult in a way that runs counter to the organization. There's never been a fictional movie about Satanists that was even kind of accurate. Right. One that doesn't involve some type of sacrifice or bloodletting. Not even close. It would be really interesting to see if someone could ever do that. I think it would be so confusing. Did you talk to folks about cinematic depictions of Satanism? It's so weird and interesting to watch the negotiation take place. You've got this weird cycle. You see it all the time with Sabrina, American Horror Story, and whatever, where you have these depictions of devil worshippers and it attracts rebellious teenagers to the idea of Satanism. Any of them who actually develop any interest go to the bookstore and learn about Anton LaVey, who founded the Church of Satan in 1966. Then they're like, oh, this isn't actually at all what Sabrina is. But it is interesting to me. If you're a certain kind of provocative person who likes to troll people, you might want to be, you might be into putting the pentagram on your shirt. But there's no Satanists in that way, what you would think there are in these movies. Then you end up with more Satanists of the real kind because there is a weird back and forth where they take iconography and the imagery, all of which, as you said earlier, are projections. There never was a black mass. It was only a fantasy on the part of the Catholics. Then you've got the real Satanists doing a fake black mass. It just confuses people to no end. I try to explain it to people and I'm like, they really want you to think about the fact that there never really were any Satanists. The imagery becomes meta. It's all about reclaiming what people assume was happening in the suburban basements or whatever. It's very weird. It's a very weird relationship between the pop cultural fantasy of Satanism and the reality of Satanism. And the back and forth between them, it is very complicated. Anton LaVey loved that crap. He circulated lots of rumors. I think it's been demonstrated that it's not true. But he wanted everyone to believe that he actually played the devil in Rosemary's Baby. Even while he was saying Satanism is about atheism, freedom, individual values, and sexual liberation. And he was also really into the idea of associated with the Rosemary's Baby. You can't do Satanism without the popular fear of Satan, so those movies help. They continue to keep Satan relevant. Why would anyone, this is off the record, why would anyone want to keep Satan relevant? No one cares if you want to be an atheist and go home and yell about how dumb Christians are. They really don't care if you're a Satanist. You get a lot of attention. It's like reverse engineering the way that people develop a belief system. I would have thought of it as a bad branding, like, hey, you guys, movies like Hereditary are not the way it works. It's not bad branding. It just helps them seem more relevant at the end of the day. If you think Satanism is bad branding, you're just not a Satanist. For them, it can't be anything else. It's not like they were looking around for the right symbol, considered a spaghetti monster, and went with Satanism. Right. And it's dependent on the idea that Satan is a concept that comes from organized religion. Unlike the spaghetti monster, they want you to be part of culture. They want you to be like, we as a Western civilization have been paving this for 2,000 years now. Conversion about good and evil and what it means to be a human and how we got here and how we're supposed to live. We want to be a part of that conversation. We don't want to be like Richard Dawkins and just go over there and say, look at all these idiots, F them all. Wait until they're all dead. Can't wait for the future secular world. They want to be a part of the conversation, so it has to be Satan, because that's how they get to the part of the conversation. No one cares if you want to be an atheist and go home and yell about how dumb Christians are. They really do care if you're a Satanist. You get a lot of attention. What's the thing you left on the cutting room floor that was the hardest to let go? All the satanic panic stuff. We had so much more. It's years and years with all these cases. The power of the human mind, it's just nuts. I think about all those kids who were convinced by adults that they had basically been raped by the devil and that they were irrevocably harmed by it. walking around as adults. That's so disturbing to me. Those poor people. I think that was the hardest thing we cut. We did so much really good research and interviews on that topic, and then we ended up with one scene because it was just so much. To start to get into false memories, multiple personality disorders, dissociative identity, all these psychological ideas that allow this concept to continue. And what happened with all this crazy alliance with feminists who were like, in quotes, believe the victims, child abuse is bad. Alongside these crazy people were just imagining devil worshippers everywhere. Gloria Steinem was a big part of this. It's a long story. Once we had to start explaining what dissociative identity disorder was, we were sunk. The fact is, there would be no satanic temple without the satanic panic. It's very generational. It's people our age because we're like, oh yeah, right. We all learn about Satanism on daytime television. Based on your research, he asked, what really was satanic panic and what was actually going on? That's what's crazy. When I talk to all these experts, there are so many factors. Anyone gives you an answer to that is leaving out something. It really was the growth of an understanding of domestic sexual violence as a very important, real thing in the 70s. There was a moment, most rape is happening in the home. That happened then, and there was the stranger danger panic, which was a whole other thing. Then there was the rise of the Christian right and their dominance in popular culture through televangelism. Then you had women going into the workforce in record numbers, leaving their kids in daycare. A lot of anxiety about that and guilt. What's happening with our children while we're off at work? Is this good for society? There was so much going on that it's hard to blame one person. So then no one got blamed and no one ever apologized. Everyone had their little piece to the puzzle. Why did it end? Which is at least an equally important question, is also unclear. It just sort of did. It wasn't because of the society all woke up one day and had a conversation about this, because it seems like we never did that. He asks, for someone who wants to explore more about the history of Satanism, why would you ever want to, in my opinion? What else was part of your research? I was reading the First Amendment law, trying to understand the framework. Jay Wexler was our legal expert. I read a bunch of books by him. Then Kevin Cruz was our historian. He'd written a really good book called One Nation Under God that helped me understand that story. Then there was Jesper Peterson, who was our religion expert. I'd read a bunch of his books and articles about Satanism and religion phenomenon of the modernity, and that was super helpful for me to understand, from a religious scholar point of view, what this meant. There was another expert who we didn't get to use, Debbie Nathan, who wrote the seminal book of the Satanic Panic, Satan's Silence. Then another expert we didn't end up using was Kathleen Stewart, who was a journalist, whose beat has been the attempt on the part of evangelicals to take over the government. Amazing story. Who's making the plan happen? Who are the lobbying groups? What is the model legislation that's being written by these lobbying groups? What's their stated agenda? Also, we didn't even do the interview, but we wanted to get a Christian theologian who could talk to us about the history of the devil. It's not like there's one representation of the devil. In fact, there was no devil in Christianity for quite some time. Only in retrospect did we start saying, oh, the snake in the Garden of Eden is the devil. Because in the Bible, Satan's just a fallen angel? Yes, exactly. The history of Lucifer and the idea of Satan, which was a word out of Judaism that just meant the adversary, combined and created its own narrative. Again, we keep rewriting the Bible. So then future generations of scholars go back and read the Bible and say, look, here's Satan all along. They continue. Part of the message of the Satanic Temple is that the meaning of the symbols changes. They're malleable to culture. Things change over time. It's not insane to say this Baphomet image means freedom and diversity and reconciliation of opposites and openness to all. Just because you think it means the devil and evil and baby sacrificing doesn't mean that's what it means. That's what they were so mad at Sabrina when they ripped off the Baphomet monument and put it in the show as a monument that means evil. They're like, and quote, "We worked really hard to make that monument. All of our lawsuits were proposing a meaning for this monument, and if that monument ever did get installed in a State House lawn, the meaning of it would be religious diversity. There's no particular reason we have to hold on to the idea of Satan as an ultimate embodiment of evil. I think that's a really important thing. The meaning of these images is not settled. The Ten Commandments monument, the meaning of it 60 years ago was go see the Charlton Heston movie. Now it's like an important part of our heritage as a nation. The idea that the Ten Commandments are so foundational, you're like, this is not what is going on one generation ago." This interview was edited and condensed. So my friends, what does this all mean? This means that they're trying to normalize Satanism. And they're trying to say, hey, it's about freedom of speech. It's about just being different and diversity between religions. It's okay. Just come aboard. It's not about baby killing and witches and sacrifice and being evil. It has nothing to do with that. It's just being different. You see how they're trying to blur the lines. This is what they do. This is how they've always done it. This is how we got to this point. More of this crap. You understand that they're trying to blur the lines. They tear down churches. They burn down churches. They stomp on the cross. They do so many things. They even kill people. We all know that these politicians, that these elite practice this stuff. They're trying to bleed it into humanity further and further so that they can keep evil in charge. That is not what is happening, my friends. There has been a duality shift where good is now beating evil. As we awaken, as we push forward, as we push our frequencies higher into a different positive, into a higher positivity realm, we will be able to see things more clearly. This is what I'm trying to get you to understand, my friends. It's very real. It's very strong. This is not something to play around with, my friends. If you found this informative and you enjoyed it, please subscribe to my channel. You can follow me on Twitter at True Reporting. And don't forget to leave a like. The more likes this video receives, the more times it is recommended to other viewers, thus more eyes on the truth. My friends, you can donate to this channel by going to my PayPal or my Patreon in the description box below. I thank you for all the support and kindness, and stay positive out there, my friends. We are seeing a change in reality for the betterment. Have a great night. Bye-bye.